Hey y'all, it's Gord. Welcome to Weedy Weekend number 45, the show where I bring you the last 7 days of news as shared with me or as I have found about cannabis throughout the world. Sometimes it's rather international, sometimes it's only medical. It's interesting only covering 7 days because it does change up quite a bit. Before we get started, let's have one shot each together, and I'd love to see a comment as to what you're going to have with me. What I've got right there is a little dab, a big dab, of Master Bubba Rosin. It is absolutely beautiful. There it is. Really, really clear, clean, light in taste. Cheers. Cheers to everybody. Happy Weedy Weekend. And even though I can now, even though there are no specific restrictions on me that will be enforced by anybody, doesn't mean I don't restrict my own behavior. And that's why this week's Weedy Weekend is later in the evening. I like to have tokes with you guys and talk with you guys and make this a full cannabis experience. And I'm not going to do that when my son's in that room or in that room. I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to wait until he goes home. He isn't here every weekend. So every second Sunday, Weedy Weekend comes in the afternoon. And in between those Sundays, it comes in the evening. That's just how it is. So let's talk about our first story. And our first story comes right from the Colorado courts systems. It's quite interesting. Is cops are out there dropping DUIs, driving under the influence, to pot users like crazy. But the courts are kicking them out. The courts are saying, you haven't proved anything. The neat thing is the challenge. Those that haven't challenged it have paid their fines and gone on because they're treating I think it's 5 nanograms of THC in your blood system or more. That's the limit is 5. Once you get 6 nanograms, you're impaired. You're charged. But what the courts found is that when challenged, there's nothing to support that 6 nanograms or any nanograms or 100 nanograms or at what level impairment happens. And especially 6 nanograms is really low. But I'm quoting from the story here. Until there's an actual way to measure cannabis impairment, not just the levels of THC in your system, slapping around DUIs just isn't a fair way to go. There have been countless studies since marijuana started being legalized, almost all of which tell you the old stoner joke that alcoholics run stop signs and stoners wait for them to turn green could be true. In all the studies done with simulators, drivers who consumed cannabis were more likely to drive slowly and leave more space between them and the cars in which they're following in order to compensate for their impairment because they're aware of it. Whereas those who consumed alcohol for the study were more likely to drive faster and recklessly. Basically, stoned drivers were aware of their possible impairment and tried to make adjustments to avoid an accident. So is there any reason to worry about stoned drivers after all? Maybe we're safer. The thing is I won't even say we're safer. I know I'm safer when I'm high. I know I am. I'm more connected to the roadway and the deed, the job. Everything else is gone. But not everybody is everything, and we got to realize that. That's a problem with regulations. Regulations take a generality and force it to become universal when no generality can be specific to a person. You know what I mean. So, good story. Good on the people of Colorado. Stand up to this. There needs to be studies to decide on impairment levels, if at all. Let's have a cheers to that. And I have prepared also, Master Bubba, in a pipe, in Dr. Puffer. Yep. Show you the Master Bubba. Beautiful, beautiful jar of it. So far, I'll do a strain review where I actually give you my return, and I've had my yield, on rosin on this Master Bubba. But so far, my yield has not been good. But my iron broke, and I'm dealing with new irons, and so it's hard to say what the actual yield will be. But we'll get to that. Let's have a cheers with some Master Bubba, and we'll get on to the next story. So much more flavor when you're smoking a little harder on the lungs, but when you're smoking the flower, you get all the flower. You get all the flavor. And Master Bubba has a really deep earth flavor. It's what good, really good weed tasted like in the 70s. Now, next story. Legal marijuana is finally doing what the drug war could not do. And that is, it's dragging down and killing the cartels. The marijuana production in Mexico it's a quarter what it was a decade ago. The story is pretty good. And I'll quote here, 2 or 3 years ago, a kilogram, 2.2 pounds of marijuana was worth $60 to $90. That's amazing when you consider we can't get an ounce for $90. We get it for twice that. A Mexican marijuana grower told NPR News in December, but now they're paying us $30 to $40 a kilo. $30 to $40 for 2 pounds. Over 2 pounds. It's a big difference. If the U.S. continues to legalize pot, they'll run us into the ground. And it's not just price. Mexican growers are facing pressure on quality. It used to be, when I was growing up in the 70s, you had levels of weed you could buy. Now, I'm from the days where a nickel bag was a nickel bag. That's why it was called a nickel bag and a dime bag. You know, a nickel bag was an eighth, dime bag was a quarter, and trying to remember some of the other names, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I paid $20 an ounce, $5 for an eighth, for a quarter. I mean, yeah, I don't think we had eighths. The nickel bag was a quarter ounce. The dime bag was a half ounce. But $10, I mean, $5 you put that in the gas tank and you could drive for a week. So very, very different times. But back to the levels. We had levels of purchase where you could get local homegrown for half that price. But for that price, you would get Mexican. If you wanted to pay a little bit more, maybe 50% more, you could get Acapulco weed or Thai or That's when you got into the fancy stuff. Seldom. I wouldn't say seldom. Quite often I got into the fancy stuff because I was in a rock band, so we often met other people with good stuff. Another cheers to the fact that, once again, legalization beats prohibition. Hands down. I mean, seriously, do I like that even my grown children can access legal poison called alcohol, and it hurts them and others around me? No. But do I want it prohibited? No. They have to be able to make the choices of their own bodies, not be prohibited or told by a government what is good and what isn't good for you, because obviously after 80 years of prohibition of pot, we have found that they hid all the good and lied about all the bad. Cheers. On to the next story. Marijuana may help prevent organ transplants. This is yet another new avenue that I've been trying to visualize all the avenues that the THC and CBD and all the others take. And what's going to be the next thing that they say it can fix? I didn't guess this. I just didn't guess this. But, and it isn't the CBD. It is somewhat the CBD, but in doing this, they were trying to weed out the fact that THC need be involved at all. Everybody kind of thinks of THC as the bad boy just because it makes you high, just because it gives a mental side effect that I do not think is negative. But this study found that there is a really strong marriage between the CB1 and the CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors receive the CB2 receptors are the receptors that receive the CBD and work on the immune system, while the CB1 receptors in the brain, more affected by THC, more handled with THC, have been found to have a profound effect also on the immune system, thereby marrying the two, thereby saying, don't strip that THC away from the CBD. The THC is making it better. It is a very complicated study. It is a really, from Marijuana Times, it is a really well-written study. I'm not going to read it to you because it's really technical. I sat and read it 2 or 3 times tonight to make sure I understood it. But I will read this. So if the discovery that cannabinoids can affect the immune system through the CB1 receptor is confirmed, it is a big deal. First of all, it can mean that there may not be a way to separate some of the desired immune system effects from the undesired mental ones, unless they're desired, if they are both medicated by the same receptor. Secondly, it means that we may have to rethink the relevance of CB1 in the immune system. The more we learn, the more we find that these are all simpatico. These things not only work great on their own, but their own power is enhanced by just being there while the other one's working its magic. This plant is it's an entourage of medicine that we're just opening up. We're just opening it up, and we're finding that it's covering, dare I say it, everything. Cheers to the medical side of cannabis. Now, oh, that's a nice taste. Let's move on to a Jamaican study, which I have quoted before, and I will quote again. It is, again, more knowledge about the medical effects of cannabis, this time with pregnant mothers. This is, I promised this a couple of, probably 3 Weedy Weekends ago, probably 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, where I did bring forward one study that was talked about by Becca somebody who spoke of this study. Now this is this study of Dr. Dreyer and her team compared babies of Jamaican women who smoked marijuana during pregnancy and those who did not. The researchers tested infants on a variety of functions, 1, 3, and 30 days after birth. Their findings were surprising. Cannabis-exposed babies scored significantly higher in their reflex tests, as well as tests of basic functions like blood pressure and heart rate. The infants of cannabis-using moms were also less irritable and more alert. It's an interesting study. Something that, again, I bring out because these are difficult subjects. People think, how dare you get your baby high? Because obviously if you get high, your baby's got to get high. People got to understand, stop using the word high. It's medication. If you're careful about the medication you take, some medicine is good for a baby. So we just need to learn more and release the inhibitions that have been illegally, I say, placed there by our government to tell us that this thing is evil. Try to prove one evil side of this. One. I truly believe that we haven't yet hit on how wonderful this stuff is for ladies. Ladies don't speak about it much, but there are a lot of ladies who take marijuana and they love it because it gets rid of the broken part of our systems. Our systems functioning during the month, and now I speak of a lady having her monthly function, that shouldn't be a painful thing. Our bodies reacting to the world shouldn't be a painful thing. When pain is involved in a natural function, there's something wrong. You add cannabis to that time or to that person, and that functions better and doesn't hurt without adding things like super strength Midol and Advil and all that kind of stuff. So they're only striking on the wonders of this. Let's move on to one from the Stoner's Cookbook. I'm first going to quote this. Anti-marijuana propagandists love to tout marijuana as the next tobacco, ruining millions of lives when in fact it's saving them. While marijuana has dozens of uses, tobacco has only one, though that is the fundamental difference. The debate over the two rages on. Marijuana, 0 annual deaths. Tobacco, 443,000 annual deaths. That's almost 500,000 die every year. And alcohol, 25,000 deaths a year. And I also know that it's 106,000, so higher than alcohol, deaths a year attributed to pharmaceuticals. And then in this story, they go on to nail down a bunch of hard facts, which are really good, and how it helps lung function over time. And the worst harm of marijuana is the going to jail. That's the only thing. Take that away and we're okay. Why are we protecting people from themselves? Let people be. Heck, we're letting them drink their livers to, like I did until 13 years ago, to cirrhosis. They'll let that happen. Just absolutely ridiculous. So it's a good story. Stoner's Cookbook. Marijuana won't harm like tobacco. It's one of those comparison stories. I usually skip over them. There was one last week, marijuana and cocaine, and I skipped it. But I'm bringing this one to you. I don't like tobacco. I'm so glad I'm off of it. It's been, my son's 7 years old, so it's been 8 years. 8 years, February 25. Next story. These last two stories. Before I do it, I better have something, because I gotta say these next two stories upset me. So let's bring this speaker in a little closer here and have a talk. First, let's have a toke. Duke Nukem. There's old Duke in butter format. We're going to have a little bit of this. Very lemony taste. Very citric. Very beautiful. Oh, that's very big. Cut that down a little bit. And we say cheers to you all. Now that one stuck in the craw as it was coming out. Don't want to give you too much of that. Excuse me. Sorry about that. It's okay. These two stories are related. Although one's in Montana, the other's in Oregon. Portland, to be specific. The first one, marijuana dispensaries in Montana could be forced to close their doors. I don't know, it sounds like they're really pulling back the medical aspect. For some reason, and it says here that back in 2011, there were over 30,000 medical patients in Montana. For some reason, somehow, they decided that that was too many. It was too many for the population per capita. They felt they had too many medical marijuana patients. There could be a bunch of reasons that are valid that one area might have more than others. Part of it, of course, is the legislation itself. Here in Canada, 5-10 years ago, you had to be dying. Now they understand that it treats so many ailments that they leave that up to the doctor. Oh boy, that really hit hard. Um, but anyways, however they came to this conclusion, they decided that they had to start restricting access. And they have entered a whole bunch of changes that are absolutely archaic and do not have the health rights of your citizens involved. I'm quoting, the changes to the medical marijuana program include limiting providers, shop owners, or dispensaries to only sell to 3 registered medical marijuana patients at a time. This is the biggest problem with the legislation as it now reads. Even if all 471 existing businesses sold to 3 individuals each, it would leave over 10,000 patients without access to the medicine that they need. Doctors will be limited to recommending 25 patients for medical treatment each year. How are quotas and limits and these kind of regulations at all with the health of the people involved? This is just trying to look good. This is polishing a turd. It doesn't matter how many ways you polish a piece of shit, it's still a piece of shit. Stop making it try to look pretty. Make it work. Get it to the people that need it. And if you think that the people don't need it, then look at your regulations, compare it to others, and force your doctors to live by them, because in other places they do work. That's over-regulation. The next one is wishy-washy regulation, Portland, Oregon. On Wednesday, Portland lawmakers... oh, okay, I thought it said lawmakers. Lawmakers unanimously banned drive-through dispensaries within the city. While there are not any dispensaries currently operating with drive-through or walk-up windows, there's definitely been talk on the subject. So lawyers put a stop to it before it could even have a chance. That's just wishy-washy regulation. I don't know if a drive-through dispensary is a need or not a need, but it certainly goes to show that there needs to be an overarching guidance. Both our countries have the structure in order to do this right. You have an overarching guidance called the Fed that looks after all state/province. It doesn't matter if the Fed be our federal government or your federal government. And their mandate is to keep people safe. They should be trying to get all the states together. First, get it off Schedule 1. Let's get into reality. Let's release this to the public and thereby give guidance to the states, to the provinces of best practices. Get meetings going, get studies going, get scientific studies going without pre-proposed hypotheses. And let's move forward with this. We have communities just struggling because people need access to their medicine. I know what it's like to be restricted your access by the government. And if not for the kind heart of my ex, I'd still be restricted. So I know what that's like. And the government needs direction, but the government has no knowledge. Our governments are still the people just one generation above me. And, my dad, he listens to me and he's still wishy-washy, won't touch the stuff, although it would really help him at his point in life right now. But he's accepting and understanding, but it's that generation that is still basically in charge. We need to stand up stronger and force the government into stop turning a blind eye, the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil bullshit, and realize I'm speaking now to the federal government of the United States, is realize your people want this through. So, period, it's your responsibility, since you work for the people, to provide that in the best, safest way possible. And that is not by turning a blind eye and letting the states flounder in trying to find what regulation works or what regulation does not. Meanwhile, that plays with people's physicality, their very souls, their lives. No, it's time. I'm so glad Canadian courts stood up and forced our government and said, before you even go and legalize this recreationally, fix this medical program. Give people proper access. Give people choice. Give people their freedom to choose their medication, to grow their medication, and to use their medication. However, they need to, in correlation with their doctor. And now we're at the end of Weedy Weekend. Over 30 minutes. I'm kind of happy with that. We'll have one final cheers. I won't cough so bad. And I want to thank y'all for coming out. At number 45, hey, we're getting there. 52 will be the 1 year anniversary of Weedy Weekend. I'll have to see when that is. Hopefully, I'll have something coming up for 420. I was really wanting to go to Vernon for 420 so I could see what MMJ Total Healthcare is up to. But I'm not real sure yet. I may go to Vernon. I may not. It's the middle of the week, so I might. That's a nice time to head down to Vernon, and cheap for the hotels. So we are at the end of Weedy Weekend, everybody. I have no more stories. Many of my stories, no matter where they come from, Marijuana Times, The Stoner's Cookbook, excuse me, they very often come from MMJ Total Healthcare. They pass me on a lot of stories. If you see something that you want covered on Weedy Weekend, if it's news related, if it's anything else related, just how-to, instructional videos, whatever else, drop me a note. We'll cover it. But if you want something covered on Weedy Weekend, say it specifically on one of these. And I'll do my best to cover it next week. Send me in Google stories or email me my stories. And I'll cover them. I hope y'all had fun. I sure had fun. Happy Sunday night. By the time you guys see this, some of you, it's already Monday, but that's okay. This is a recap of the last week. You'll watch it whenever you find the time, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you give me the thumbs up. I hope you share it with your friends. Peace and cheers. Love and harmony. Spend this week with smiles for everybody, because those smiles will come back twofold, threefold, fivefold. Peace.